One of my favorite things in Blue Lock is its use of visual metaphors, or auras if you prefer. There's so much symbolism in Blue Lock's imagery that often seems to go overlooked, and I love picking apart all of its multifaceted layers. But there was one piece of imagery I just couldn't crack for ages. Why has Rin consistently been associated with water? From the second selection to the U20 match, all the way up to PXG. And after expending an unhealthy amount of mental energy on this question, I think I've got some answers. Some that will shine light not just on Rin's character, but also on some of the most fundamental aspects of Blue Lock's philosophy. Hello, my name is Sean, and the main reason I couldn't wait for Rin to score was because I've really been wanting to make this video. Now, before I discuss either Rin or water, I have to talk about the meaning of fire. More specifically, let's turn to the claim that bookends chapter 1. According to the very first lines in the story, goalies, defenders and midfielders can be raised, but strikers, they are a completely different beast. World-class strikers will suddenly arise wherever the game is at its hottest. This quote is reiterated when the Blue Lock candidates charge through the gate, as well as by Jinpachi Ego himself on the chapter's last page. The entire purpose of the Blue Lock program is to make it the place where the game is at its hottest in the whole world. This fire imagery pops up at really important junctions throughout the manga. Let me give you just one example. The Chigiri at the start of the story is in a way reflective of the state of Japanese football more broadly. Dejected, without the fire to properly pursue his dreams. But then have a look at the terms in which he speaks once he gives it one final chance. Chigiri gets fired up from looking at Isagi. His emotions are boiling over. He tells himself to keep burning and declares that he won't stop running until his fire burns out. Until he's the best in the world. Now, I know that all of these are basically dead metaphors, but this sustained imagery is no coincidence in my view. Blue Lock has established that fire and being the world's best go hand in hand. And so, it's no coincidence that the scenes leading up to the first moment in the manga where a character declares wholeheartedly that they'll be the greatest striker are filled with metaphors from this specific semantic domain. At the same time, it's very apt for Chigiri to be the first character in this series to be consumed by fire. After all, a fire only rages on until it has burnt up its last ounces of fuel. And of all the characters in the story, Chigiri is by far the most aware that his fire has an expiration date. In fact, I think Chigiri is deliberately used to establish this as another significant facet of the fire metaphor. We see this again in Nagi's arc in the NEL, whose fire has run its course after defeating Isagi, up until he invites Reo to kindle a new fire in him for their final match. And something very similar happens to Rin as well, as we'll see towards the end of the video. But let me move to the bigger picture again. Fire essentially serves as a major structuring device in the story. At the start of the second selection, Ego identifies that Japanese footballers are fostered in a tepid environment, one without the necessary heat to give rise to a world-class striker. Now, there's one scene that perfectly captures the frigid state of Japanese football. Sae Itoshi departed from Japan to join a world-class team, dreaming of becoming the #1 striker. But as it turns out, a confrontation with the world's best is a humbling experience for even Japan's most promising upcoming player. And so he returns home, mentally broken by the wall in front of him. And there, he sees Japanese football for what it truly is. A windswept snowscape that chills even the most potent of fires. He now understands that in such an environment, even his younger brother, who once seemed full of promise, emits only tepid heat at best. The state of Japanese football only changes during the U20 match. One of the most significant outcomes of this contest is that it serves to kindle the fire of Japanese football as a whole. At first, Japan's greatest upcoming player is severely underwhelmed by his nation's under-20 team, essentially by their lack of heat. But as the Blue Lock 11 vastly surpasses their opponent's expectations, they also achieve something else. They light a fire among the established order. And then, when the U20 team comes fully into its own with Shido on the field, their fire in turn adds extra fuel to the heat radiating off the Blue Lockers. These are the conditions that start to shape Japan into the place where football is the hottest in the entire world. So, with this as our groundwork, it's now time to examine how Rin fits into this picture. And let me turn to one scene in particular that perfectly encapsulates my central thesis. The fire has just been lit under the U20 team, and Sendou is determined to even the score. But right then, just as he resolves to become the hero of the match, Rin swoops in with a watery aura and declares that Sendou's play was merely tepid. Now, I'd recommend checking out my U20 analysis because I go over these issues in much greater detail over there. But long story short, the central concern of the U20 match is who will become the hero of Japanese football. And to put it simply, Blue Lock equates the idea of becoming a hero with emitting the most heat. So that's how Rin's character intersects with all of these ideas. Rin, from his earliest childhood, has dreamed of becoming the monster that obliterates even the mightiest of heroes. And just as an aside, because I'm quite proud of this one, I do have to flex that I actually caught on to the symbolism of Rin as the monster in my U20 video before this became a thing and was made explicit in the PXG match. So anyways, why does Rin's water come out when he shuts down Sendou? Because Rin is the monster that obliterates prospective heroes. And so, he is represented by water because he extinguishes their heat. And all this is brought out through his signature catchphrase tepid. Rin's destructive tendencies are manifested by his ability to douse even the most fiercely raging flames. In fact, the threat of having your fire extinguished was already flagged by the imagery from Ego's first speech of the match. When the Blue Lock 11 finds themselves taken aback by the U20 team, Ego likens players who can't respond to unforeseen circumstances to Momotaro's companions during a shipwreck. Two teams duking it out to determine the future of Japanese football are left with the choice to sink or swim, and only those who can escape the water will come out victorious. By the way, have a look at how this exchange plays out afterwards. Rin becomes water to stop Sendou, and in contrast, he sends off the ball with a fiery blaze. Only for Sae to stop Rin in turn and fire off the ball with a splash of water. So in other words, the Itoshi brothers still prove themselves capable of extinguishing the heat of Japanese football in the match's first half. But let's take a step back and look at the match where Rin's water aura first manifested. And here I have to shout out my mate The Wise, because this glorious mofo could just list every single instance of water imagery in the series at the drop of a hat, and I would have seriously missed some of these if he hadn't pointed them out to me. So we're in the final match of the second selection, the moment of truth that will show if Isagi's team has grown enough to finally scale the seemingly insurmountable wall that is Rin Itoshi. The sheer magnitude of this task is visualized very early on through the metaphor of Rin flowing through the field. With his unrivaled abilities, he's become like water, freely adapting to any challenge. And significantly, this is the first time in the match that he declares that his opponents are merely tepid, right when his water threatens to drown out his opponent's fire. But then, Team White gains the upper hand over Rin for the first time, and Bachira asks a key question. Are their opponents still tepid? Rin's response here is telling. They've managed to get Rin fired up. So in other words, if the central concern of the 4v4 is whether Isagi and his teammates have it in them to surpass Rin, this conflict plays out on a symbolic level through the contrast between fire and water. The test for our protagonists is if they can produce a fire that's hot enough to withstand the stranglehold of the watery tendrils of Rin, the puppet master. That brings us to the final moments of the 4v4, where Bachira finds himself as its weakest link. Or to put it differently, Bachira has grown tepid within a scorching hot playing field. And look at the shot where he realizes that he's lost sight of his reasons for playing football in the first place. Bachira has sunk to the bottom of the ocean, symbolizing how his fear of isolation has extinguished his fire, but also concurrently that he's finally diving deep enough to salvage his buried ego. This aquatic imagery is revoked as Bachira awakens to liberate himself from his curse. As he tramples upon his monster, the fathomless ocean is reduced to something more akin to a tiny puddle, or to bubbles that he's about to burst. But in the aftermath of this play, all the aquatic imagery comes to its natural conclusion. Through a stroke of luck, the ball eventually falls to Rin's feet, and he delivers the shot that douses everyone's fire. And as the symbolic victor of this elemental battle, Blue Lock's number 1 demands the right to pick a new teammate. So basically, upon plunging his opponents into the depths of despair, Rin consolidates his reign over his signature element by choosing, in his own words, who he won't allow to sink away. And yes, that pun is also very much present in the original Japanese. So in the 4v4, the idea that Bachira is shackled by the monster of his own creation is figurized through the visual of himself trapped on the seafloor, only for this imagery to segue into the spread of Rin making a splash with his winning goal. But as we then reach the U20 match, it becomes apparent that there's even further layers to all of this. To put it simply, Bachira's aquatic isolation also serves to foreshadow Rin's big moment of awakening. This has already been suggested by their interaction preceding the 4v4. Bachira recognized in Rin a kindred spirit of sorts, someone who's haunted by demons of his own. And by the end of the U20 match, Bachira is proven right, more than we'd ever thought. Rin finally realized that he was the tepid one all along, because he had allowed himself to be ensnared by the values of others. And look at how this is depicted specifically. Rin is held captive by these abyssal monstrosities that emerge from a pool of water or bubble into existence in the depths, with his true ego submerged in the deepest recesses of his psyche. So when Rin finally unleashes his dormant urges, we come to understand that his water imagery can be read in another way as well. Rin, the egotistical destroyer, is water because he snuffs out the fire of others. But the water is also a manifestation of the spectres that repress his innermost desires. So now, let's finally turn to the ongoing PXG match, because Rin's water imagery has started to evolve in exciting new directions during the past few chapters. And all of this was already anticipated in my view ever since he was first given his shine in the aftermath of the showdown against Manshine City. Here, Rin announces that he isn't in the least concerned with anything beyond surpassing his older brother. All he knows is that the current Blue Lock is filled with tepid losers, and so he's willing to descend even into the raging bowels of hell to set his fire ablaze. And this is a really interesting turn, isn't it? After all, Rin's destructive tendencies were consistently represented by the polar opposite element. Yet, we know that Rin has understood the need to change, so that he can vanquish his rivals old and new. And as I'll show, we bear witness to this transformation through the interplay between fire and water that has come to define the new Rin in recent chapters. At the start of the match, our man is still up to his usual watery shenanigans. He elegantly destroys Kaisa's signature weapon, turning even the most highly valued player in the NEL tepid. This is the Rin Itoshi as we know him, the beautifully destructive master of water. Yet, as the match progresses, Rin finds himself trapped further and further in Isagi's shadow, up until the switch is flipped, and Rin once more descends into the deepest crevices of his ego. Note, by the way, how overtly that moment in PXG parallels Rin's declaration before his moment of truth in the U20 match, that being his final showdown against his older brother. Again, there's an object sinking into the depths, but where Rin's ball in the U20 match reached only the halfway point of the page, the decapitated toy has made the full descent. By implication, Rin's previous awakening didn't fully attune him to his true ego. After all, we discover in the PXG match that Rin's destructive impulses manifested even before he began playing football. Given the connection between these two moments, it should be no surprise that PXG expands on the water imagery from the U20 match as well. After being humiliated by Isagi in the final moments of the U20 match, we see that Rin has stared deep into the abyss and unshackled his inner demons. And so, we see the aquatic imagery respond in kind. The Rin of PXG gets fully enveloped in this miasmic water, which is now taking the shape of the terrors lurking in the deep. So, if Rin was initially represented by water because repressing his subconscious impulses led him to figuratively extinguish his fire, his water is now flooded with Lovecraftian horrors because he's diving straight into the Mariana Trench of his own ego. Symbolically, we're meant to understand that Rin has gone down the deep end. For him, discovering his true ego becomes like a voyage into the deep sea, the most inhospitable space on Earth that's filled with terrifying and unfathomable monstrosities. In fact, this is exactly how Isagi experiences his showdown with the awakened Rin. Rin Itoshi has become a fully incomprehensible creature, one beyond the confines of logic and reason. And to a player like Isagi, this encounter with the great unknown is fucking terrifying. By the way, here's another neat little visual parallel. Rin, in his assimilation with the denizens of the deep sea, causes Isagi's puzzle to disintegrate, as he's fully transformed into a being beyond human understanding. Now, if I'm not mistaken, there's only one other instance in the entire manga where Isagi's puzzle pieces are being destroyed. Not just coming undone, but actually crumbling to dust. Namely, when Rin defeats Isagi's team by calling down luck. Again, this is an instance where seemingly irrational factors allowed Rin to gain the upper hand over Isagi. So in a way, the visual callback reminds us that Rin has always inhabited a space beyond the confines of pure reason. Yet, at the same time, the PXG match also employs Rin's water imagery even more explicitly as the representation of the spectres that haunt him. In chapter 269, his water gradually solidifies into two figures, towering above him as they callously deny Rin's entire being. This is an evolution of the imagery from the U20 match, and quite a meaningful one at that. Back then, Rin's water kept him tepid because he sought to play like Sae, rather than obeying his own driving impulses. But as we delve even deeper into his subliminal desires, the water takes on a new form accordingly. Rin adopts the persona of the ultimate monster, fighting to the death against almighty heroes. But as the chapters progress, he puts this in a different way as well. Rin gets fired up upon entering the flow state, and desires to set his life ablaze, to crash and burn against the most powerful enemy on the field. So in other words, this is the fire that Rin has been repressing all this time. And that's why he now visualizes Sae and Isagi as water. Rin's fire is still too tepid to overcome his inner demons. In fact, the recent flashback reveals that Sae has been the water to Rin's fire long before their fateful reunion. Just have a look at their respective hoodies. Back when the two Itoshi siblings were inseparable, Rin had run against his hot limits, as if his fire would be snuffed out by Sae's ultra breath. We even get to witness this in action. When Rin got consumed by his destructive tendencies, Sae took him out for ice cream. In other words, Sae acted as a natural cooler who kept his brother's fiery passions in check. It's hard not to see a correlation between this scene and their eventual frigid reunion. Sae has been chilling Rin's ego since their earliest childhood, and so it was almost inevitable that he'd deal his brother the soul-shattering blow against the frost-coated backdrop. That brings us to the final showdown between Blue Lock's hero and its resident monster. No matter what Rin does, he can't seem to escape Sae's spectre, whose shape takes on aspects of Rin's deep-sea monstrosities as well. That is, until Isagi swats away the watery illusion and charges straight at Rin. And so, Rin finally faces off against a true hero in place of the ghost of someone who failed to attain that status. At last, the water dissolves and frees Rin to realize his burning, explosive desire. And just look at the trail from Rin's shot. The aquatic horrors are scorched away until all that remains is a fiery blaze. And with that, we've borne witness to Rin Itoshi's true awakening. So, this ran a bit longer than I'd anticipated, but I'm very satisfied with the final product. And also, definitely tune back in 2 weeks time, because I'll be dropping nothing less than my first real analysis of the NEL as a whole. I'll have even more to say about Rin there, as well as about Bachira and Hiyori and Kaisa. So if that sounds in any way enticing, make sure to subscribe for more in-depth Blue Lock analysis every other week. Slán!